The precise precision with which Zachary Monroe's key slid into the front door lock revealed nothing of the tempest that was building inside of him. Due to a lucky mechanical problem that necessitated an aircraft change in London, his flight from Brussels had landed 3 hours early, putting him on an earlier connection. He hadn't sent Tessa a text. Spontaneity had grown scarce after 17 years of marriage. That might have been his first error. It was still 9:47 p.m. at the residence. His skilled fingers silently disabled the security panel, which blinked green. It had been armed at 7:13 p.m., according to the log. At Georgetown University Hospital, Tessa was expected to be on call till the next morning. Nobody was prepared for pediatric surgery crises, least of all the wife of a former military intelligence officer who is now a private cybersecurity expert. As he placed his carry-on, his military boots, which he wore out of habit rather than necessity, did not make any noise on the marble foyer. Something else was layered on top of the familiar aroma of his house, the citrus and sandalwood from Tessa's meticulously collected diffusers. A discordant sound. Wine. They didn't save the Bordeaux for special events. Something less expensive. More fruity. The only outward sign of the radar pinging in his head was a small flare of his nostrils. The tale of the living room spoke for itself. Tessa's distinctive coral lipstick was smudged on one of the 2 wine glasses in the sink. When he left 4 days ago, the couch was immaculately folded, and a throw blanket was rumpled on it. These domestic disparities were subtle, but they screamed to Zachary Monroe, who was trained to see anomalies in the most chaotic battle zones. He catalogued inconsistencies as he went through the house like a ghost. As part of Tessa's obsessive habit, the bed in their bedroom was fashioned with hospital corners. The pillows, however, were positioned differently. The master bathroom shower was still a little wet. The little rosewood box on Tessa's vanity was open, which was the most damning of all. The old pendant of emerald that had belonged to his mother was gone from inside. Tessa always asked to wear it. They had an unwritten understanding. The pendant was too valuable and filled with memories to be handled carelessly. With his big shoulders erect and his face as expressionless as marble, Zach sat on the edge of the bed. He took out his phone and looked at their shared calendar. It's true that Tessa had a 36-hour shift scheduled. He launched his laptop and signed in to their home security system, a complex configuration that he had personally improved using his knowledge of cybersecurity. There was nothing out of the ordinary on the exterior cameras. The quiet alarm logs, however, which documented each door and window's opening and closing without producing an audible alert, provided a different picture. 8:24 p.m. The main alarm had been disabled the night before, but the side entrance door had been opened and closed twice in 3 hours. Zachary's finger briefly lingered over his contacts, highlighting Tessa's name. Then, without making a call, he ended the app. The same calculating coldness that had kept him alive during 3 deployments in war zones, when trust was a luxury no one could afford, sunk into his chest. On his laptop, he launched an alternative program that he had created and that the public was not able to use. In less than 5 minutes, he had set up remote monitoring on every device connected to their home network, including keyloggers, cameras, microphones, and other instruments of his trade that, up until now, he had vowed never to use against his own wife. He got up and went to their shared closet. Nothing showed through Tessa's painstakingly ordered, seasonally appropriate, color-coded, and surgically exact side. Zach, meanwhile, did not require clear-cut hints. Under her shoe rack, he knelt and pressed a concealed clasp. Silently, an empty false bottom slid open. There was nothing but dust where Tessa had formerly stored her passport and her grandmother's wedding ring for protection. "Interesting," he said, the first thing he had said since coming inside. To his own ears, his voice sounded alien, too calm, too controlled. Zachary put everything back in its proper place and shut the secret compartment. After a 20-hour international flight, he took a shower and changed into new clothing. In the kitchen, he prepared a protein drink for himself, cleaned every surface he came into contact with, and placed the security system back to its armed position. The house would look as if she had left it undisturbed to anyone who happened to glance at it, even Tessa with her keen surgeon's eye. After grabbing his carry-on, Zach left through the front entrance. He would not return this evening. He required room to plan and think. To screen with surety what every instinct, refined over years of military intelligence work, was telling him. He was being deceived by his wife. And Zachary Monroe was acutely aware of that military maxim: if there was anything. Truth is the first casualty of conflict. He made one phone call throughout his outing's clinical quiet. When the line connected, he said, "This is Monroe. I require all of the surveillance equipment. Apply the Montana Protocol." Without waiting for confirmation, he hung up. It was obvious that the Montana Protocol was named after the property he had secretly bought years earlier as a backup plan. No inquiries. Not a record. Nothing to do with his name. Rain started to fall as he drove into Georgetown's Four Seasons, causing the city lights to seem as watercolor blurs. All he could feel was a horrible clarity, as if he were about to pull a trigger. Whatever he learned over the next few days would be a game changer. However, Zachary had always recognized a basic reality that most people frantically tried to deny. Everything comes to an end. Unions, friendships. Have faith. The only thing left to do was write the ending, and he would write it this time. If Zachary used any of their joint accounts or credit cards, Tessa would be unable to conceal the extravagant $12,000 per night cost of the Four Seasons presidential suite. Using identifying documents linked to a shell company he kept for penetration testing against business clients, he made the cash payment. He was aware of the irony. He was now using the same strategies that he had used to reveal weaknesses in Fortune 500 businesses in his own marriage. By morning, he had set up a command center in the large living area of the suite. 3 laptops buzzed simultaneously, each performing a different task. One was tracking Tessa's digital footprint, another was keeping an eye on their home security cameras, and the third was linked to a proprietary system Zach had created while serving in the military. Software that fell in between classified spy technology and authorized monitoring. The equipment he had asked for arrived with a gentle rap on the door. The delivery man had a dull face, was in his mid-50s, and was invisible in the upmarket setting because he was dressed in a hotel maintenance uniform. Without introducing himself, the man wheeled in what looked like tool bags and declared, "Montana Protocol complete." Zachary gave a quick nod. "Are there any issues?" "None, despite your ambitious time frame. It's essential." Zachary purposefully never learned the man's name, and he left without saying anything more. Even though they had been associated for 10 years, they hardly knew one another. That was safer. When the cases were unpacked, a vast array of surveillance tools was discovered. GPS trackers the size of postage stamps, audio recorders that seemed like regular household items, tiny cameras no bigger than shirt buttons, and different types of digital interceptors made to intercept Bluetooth and wireless signals. Zachary prepared each device for deployment in a meticulous manner. His hands assembled parts that would become invisible eyes and ears in his own house with the mechanical accuracy of muscle memory. Verification of the suspected betrayal was necessary, as was cold, unquestionable proof that could withstand legal scrutiny, because Zachary Monroe did not lose in court if his suspicions turned out to be accurate. His phone rang with an alert at 10:13 a.m. It was a text from Tessa. "I miss you. The surgery took a long time. Sleeping in the medical facility. Tomorrow morning, home. I adore you." With the detached attention of a codebreaker, he studied the message word by word. She left the hospital at 8:47 p.m., according to the timestamp on her most recent keycard swipe. The night before, she had not come back. as he took a screenshot of the text and the hospital's security record he had accessed through a back door he had made months before. He said, "Sloppy." Then, it was habitual security consciousness rather than suspicion. Zachary spent the day reconstructing their lives together using calendar appointments, phone logs, and financial information while keeping remote surveillance. He made a careful chronology of the previous 18 months, when Tessa's conduct had started to shift in subtle ways that he had ascribed distress from her rise to department head. Slowly, and with unequivocal clarity, the patterns were apparent. Unaccounted for cash withdrawals, unexplained absences posing as work-related commitments, hotel charges in places where no medical conferences were planned, and most damning of all, a pattern of text messages to an unsaved number that came and went from their cell phone bill. Zach gathered enough inconsistencies at the end of the afternoon to support the subsequent stage. After changing into black tactical gear, he went to their neighborhood and parked on a quiet side street 3 streets from their house. He strolled through backyards and forested areas between houses, coming closer to his own house from the blind spot he had purposefully kept in their security system, a work habit he never would have thought would have such a personal use. As anticipated, the house was deserted. Disarming the security system, he proceeded to install surveillance devices in key spots, small cameras and light fixtures, smoke detectors and air vents, audio recorders in the kitchen, home office, and bedroom, GPS trackers in Tessa's luggage, purse, and the spare tire well of her Mercedes SUV, and he paused next to her pillow in their bedroom, overcome by a rare wave of emotion. For a brief time, his deliberate detachment was endangered by the magnitude of what he was doing, violating the privacy of the woman he had loved for almost 20 years. Then his eyes landed on the empty spot where his mother's pendant should have been in the rosewood box, and the moment was gone. In 93 minutes, he finished the installation, with every device invisible to the human eye but broadcasting flawlessly to the encrypted server he had set up. He took Tessa's water glass, toothbrush, and hairbrush from her bedside, as well as DNA samples, and put them all in different sterile containers before departing. He thought the DNA test would not be necessary as a precaution. However, the pattern of the reproductive treatments they had started 2 years prior seemed suspiciously convenient. Despite conflicting medical reports, Tessa had insisted for months that Zach's low sperm count was the most likely cause. Then, during a 6-week deployment overseas, she abruptly announced her pregnancy. Back then, the timing had seemed amazing. It seems to be calculated now. Zachary turned on the home security system once more as evening approached and vanished into the encroaching darkness, leaving no sign of his existence. He set up automated notifications back at the hotel to let him know if the surveillance network caught any action. Then, with patience sharpened by his military experience, he waited. Allowing the target to disclose themselves by their own behaviors is the fundamental rule of intelligence gathering. The first alarm was sent out at 11:42 p.m. His house's side door was open. Tessa was seen on the security cameras entering with a tall man wearing an expensive overcoat with silver temples. Zachary recognized him right away. Grant Whitman, the hospital board chairman and husband of the 10th District Congresswoman from Virginia. They passed through his house with the effortless familiarity of regular guests, and Zachary watched without a word. Zach didn't turn away as Grant Whitman's hands moved to Tessa's shirt buttons as they entered the master bedroom. Every instance of treachery had to be seen by him, ingrained in his mind as fuel for the future. Zachary didn't silence the audio until Tessa grabbed for his mother's jewelry, an emerald one around her neck, and said something that made Whitman giggle. Even for intelligence collecting, some injuries weren't essential. He opened his laptop in the sterile silence of the hotel suite and started writing an email to Martina Kraft, a lawyer known as the executioner in D.C. for her brutality in high-profile divorce cases. Legal communities. Contingency Alpha was the simple topic line. The war was on. The entire top floor of a modest building in Foggy Bottom housed Martina Kraft's office. It was close enough to power that her customers, who were primarily members of Washington's elite, could sneak in between congressional hearings and fundraising galas, yet far enough away from Capitol Hill to avoid political paparazzi. A single message was conveyed by the decor's purposeful austerity, which included intimidating modern art and clean lines without any personal touches or family photos. It was here that sentimentality died. She greeted Zachary without getting out of her enormous desk made of black volcanic stone. At 62, Martina both the strategic thinking of a general and the razor-sharp accuracy of a surgeon. Her charcoal suit was well fitted to her tall, slender figure, and her silver hair was tied back in a fierce bun. "You've been in my sights for years." As he sat down opposite her, Zach arched an eyebrow. "Are you expecting me?" She tapped her manicured fingers against a closed file and said, "I make it my business to know which marriages are vulnerable. Since Tessa Monroe started having an affair with Roger Bell some 14 months ago, yours has been on my watch list." Zachary felt the name strike him like a blow to the body. The man who had written their wills and gone to their anniversary dinners. Roger Bell, his friend, his lawyer? Zach's poise broke for the first time since he learned of Tessa's adultery, and his eyes tightened almost imperceptibly. Martina said, "I see that's news to you." Bell was only the first. Almost 8 months ago, Grant Whitman followed. Others might exist. Zachary's thoughts were racing, reevaluating everything. Last year, Roger insisted that Tessa and he sign updated medical power of attorney forms. Zach's cybersecurity consulting business was set up to maximize Tessa's prospective claims because of the easy access to legal assistance. Roger had shown an uncommon interest in Zach's future business aspirations during the fishing outings. "Have you been keeping an eye on my wife?" His voice was dangerously quiet as he asked. Martina's small lips formed a shape that resembled a smile. "No, I have been keeping an eye on Roger Bell. He frequently develops close relationships with the spouses of his affluent clientele. 3 of his former victims are represented by me." A packet was slid across the desk by her. "Think of this as a kind gesture. Mr. Monroe, your reputation precedes you, but I don't exchange intelligence with prospective clients very often. I suppose our ways of thinking are similar." The folder contained over a year's worth of surveillance images. Tessa and Roger entering a Baltimore boutique hotel. The 2 of them are eating lunch at a little-known Annapolis eatery. Outside Tessa's hospital, Roger gives her a small present box. The last photo was taken in the parking garage underneath Zachary's office building, with them in a close embrace. He was in Dubai 3 weeks ago for a cybersecurity seminar. Why now? With his tactical mind already looking for Martina's angle, Zachary asked. "Because you're going to have to make choices that will affect the next 10 years of your life," she said simply. "I also like clients who are well informed. It's not if your marriage is over that's the question. Whether you seek scorched earth or just complete triumph is the question." Zachary made up his mind and closed the folder. "I want to talk about a theory regarding the paternity of my daughter, and I want both." They laid up a plan for the following hour that was so thorough that it almost included financial forensics, asset protection plans, emergency custody motions, psychological warfare, and strategic evidence collection. Every component was created to eliminate any chance of Tessa or her lover surviving, not only to win. Finally, Zachary mentioned that there was one difficulty. "I don't want my kid to endure a drawn-out legal struggle. Her age is 4 years. She considers me to be her biological dad." Martina regarded him, a sliver of her calculating gaze softening. "After that, we act swiftly and forcefully. I'll get 2 sets of documents ready. One is for public filing, which is fairly normal but offers you favorable terms. The other uses the entire evidence package as leverage. Tessa will make easy decisions. Silently accept your terms, or watch as her future, reputation, and career are destroyed. And Grant Woodman, Roger Bell? Collateral damage, unless you have specific plans for them, Martina replied dismissively. Zachary grinned for the first time since he'd walked into her office. He never saw it. I always have a plan. His phone rang with an alarm from one of his surveillance devices as he was leaving Martina's office. Roger Bell was being called by Tessa. Just in time to hear her voice, strained with extreme stress, he connected to the audio feed. She was suggesting something was wrong. Someone has accessed the Meridian Trust safe deposit box. The papers are no longer there, Roger's voice answered. That's not possible. Nobody else is authorized. Are you certain? Roger, the ultrasound pictures are gone, included the initial paternity test. Roger told her he wouldn't if Zach found those, but Zachary could hear the worry in his lawyer's voice. Most likely, they are simply out of place in the package. My helper will review the access logs. Tessa growled. This isn't some administrative error. The recent transfer to the Cayman's account failed, and someone has them. There is a security hold, according to the bank. A chilly sense of satisfaction settled in Zachary's chest as he disengaged from the feed. In fact, a former NSA specialist who was now a security consultant for Martina Kraft had opened the safe deposit box. Furthermore, Zachary had started a financial earthquake, of which the unsuccessful transfer was only the first tremor. He grabbed his phone and punched in a number he remembered. The line connected, and he said, "It's Monroe. The Montana house needs to be ready for occupancy. Moreover, start Protocol Echo for biotech assets." Protocol Echo is the methodical destruction of a hostile entity's financial and digital assets. In this instance, Roger Bell had surreptitiously founded a biomedical research firm with insider knowledge from Grant Woodman's hospital board seat, partially financed by funds that were embezzled from Zachary's business accounts using fictitious legal frameworks that Roger had created. Their well-thought-out financial escape plan would be in ruins by morning. However, that was only the first shot. Zachary's next strategy would bring about the real destruction, an exacting blow to their future opportunities, personal connections, and professional reputations. Betrayal demanded complete annihilation, but war had laws. The property was located outside of Asheville, North Carolina, on 87 acres of deep forest. Only one private road leads there, and there are 3 distinct security checks. 5 years prior, Zachary had bought it through a string of sham corporations, a policy of insurance that he had thought he would never use. Disguised as an opulent mountain hideaway, the main house was a contemporary stronghold. Secure communications, bulletproof glass, reinforced walls, and enough supplies to keep residents alive in any situation. Zachary told Tessa that this was a special daddy-daughter weekend, and he brought his 4-year-old daughter, Lily, along. While she was in Baltimore for a fictitious surgical conference, she was unable to refute the lie without exposing her own deceit. Will Mom arrive later? As they passed the last security gate, Lily inquired. Her tiny face was mashed up against his Range Rover's window, and her eyes were bright when she caught a glimpse of a deer running between pine trees. Zachary answered, "Not this time, sweetheart," in a soft voice that very few people ever hear. "We have a particular location here." He observed her with somber eyes and dark curls in the rearview mirror. Her features are a wonderful combination of someone else's coloring, not his, and Tessa's delicate bone structure. He was 99.97% confident, according to the DNA test, that he was not Lily's biological father. But suddenly genetics didn't matter. In all the important ways, she was his daughter. The home appeared, a vast glass and stone building that appeared to grow naturally out of the slope. Elena Vasquez showed up on the spacious front porch as they parked. Before retiring to a consulting position at Zachary's cybersecurity company, Elena, who was in her mid-60s, had served as his field coordinator during his military intelligence days. Other than Martina, she was the only one who understood the full extent of his scheme. She gave Mr. Monroe a courteous greeting before beaming warmly at Lily. "The princess I've heard so much about must be you." When Elena mentioned the horses in the stable behind the house, Lily's reluctance gave way to excited questioning, and she huddled sheepishly behind Zachary's knee. Zachary handed Elena an overnight bag and added, "Take her to see them. I have to organize my workspace." Alone, he converted a secure room in the house into a command center more advanced than the hotel suite had permitted. Real-time surveillance feeds, financial tracking systems, and the complex network of digital tripwires he had set up around Tessa's activities were all visible on several displays. Martina Kraft, his phone rang. She informed without preface that both sets of papers were served 20 minutes ago. My process server says that her expression when she discovered what you knew was very amazing. And the full lockouts, credit cards, banking, and security access to your DC offices and residence. Presumably seeking leverage, she attempted to access your medical records using her hospital credentials. However, that access has also been taken away. Martina couldn't see Zachary, but he nodded. "Next she'll give Roger a call." "Next, Grant?" As Martina verified, "It's already happening." Bell is in a panic. An hour ago, he received the SEC notification on his biotech holdings. All assets are temporarily frozen while the investigation is ongoing. What about the custody filing? Judge Carson has it. He is inclined to issue the emergency order in view of the evidence of parental alienation and possible flight risk, particularly in light of the financial evidence supporting her plans to flee the country with Lily. Zachary's carefully produced evidence. In essence, if not in every detail, it is true. Tessa had, in fact, consulted an international custody lawyer and done study on living overseas with a child. Even though the context was theoretical, the digital footprints, when combined with her financial machinations and affairs, were damning. Zachary remarked. "She'll deny everything," observing a video feed of Tessa roaming their Georgetown house while holding her phone to her ear. "Of course, but credibility is necessary for denial. She won't have much of that left by this time tomorrow." Martina's voice was grimly satisfied. At 9 in the morning, the ethical complaint is sent to the hospital board. At 10 a.m., Congressman Whitman's office receives the bank records, which reveal that his wife's money financed biotech. At midday, the disciplinary committee of the Bar Association receives the evidence about Roger Bell. "Perfect," Zachary said. More subtly, "How is the security situation here?" The true question was clear to Martina. "You and Lily won't be discovered. Your existing arrangement is entirely lawful due to the custody decree. The property records go to a dead end, even if Tessa managed to track you down to North Carolina." Zachary hung up the phone and saw Lily from the window, laughing as she fed a carrot to a kind mare while Elena watched. Doubt began to creep in. Was his destruction of her world as complete as Tessa's destruction of his? He was shielding Lily from the impending collapse, that's what. A planned demolition is preferable to a disastrous structural failure where she would be trapped in the debris. A text message from an unidentified number rang on his phone. A facility in Montana experienced a security breach. Only mechanics. Suspected human surveillance. Montana is the secret name for his home in Georgetown. Someone was observing it, probably with the same strategies he used. Private security must have been engaged by Tessa. Though it had happened sooner than predicted, it was an expected development. He would have to quicken the pace. Zachary entered just one answer. Launch the Sierra Protocol. His plan culminated in Protocol Sierra, which was named after scorched earth. There would be no space for restitution or counter-movements. All those who had deceived him would have had their lives irreparably changed by dawn. His thoughts were disturbed by a tiny voice. "Come see the horses, Daddy." Lily, her face flushed with anticipation, called from the doorway. He pushed his features into a grin, that concealed the icy calculating behind his gaze as he turned away from the window. "Come on, my love." Zachary compartmentalized with military accuracy for the rest of the day. Devoted father when it comes to tucking Lily in, bedtime tales, and dinner. In the hours after her slumber, she was ruthless. He coordinated with a network of supporters whose allegiance had been established over years of meticulous relationship building, transferred digital assets, and verified paperwork. Every member of the hospital ethics board automatically received the first evidence package at 3:17 a.m. Financial documents demonstrating preferential treatment for Whitman's research projects are presented alongside video footage of Tessa Monroe and Grant Whitman in private settings on hospital grounds. Congresswoman Diana Whitman received an anonymous email at 4:22 a.m. that included evidence of her husband's affair and the campaign money he had embezzled to support it. Bell's law firm's controlling partners were shown proof at 5:45 a.m. showing he had engaged in serious conflicts of interest that threatened the firm's survival and had routinely violated client confidentiality. Unaware that these heartbreaking disclosures were only the outward manifestation of a far more sinister devastation taking place behind the scenes, Zachary's adversaries were already struggling for their professional lives by daylight. Elena located him in the command center, while sunrise painted the mountains red and gold in their digital footprints, bank accounts, and legal vulnerabilities. Without saying anything, she placed a cup of black coffee next to his keyboard. "Is it finished?" At last, she asked in a neutral tone. With bloodshot but clear eyes, Zachary raised his head from his displays. "The first phase is finished." The preliminary hearing marked the start of phase 2. Then he returned his attention to the screens, where Tessa was seen packing a suitcase in their bedroom in a panic, crying as she yelled into her phone. "Nothing will be the same after that," he added softly. 2 hours before the start of their usual monthly meeting, the Georgetown University Hospital Board of Directors called an emergency meeting at 7:30 a.m. The boardroom, which is typically where calm conversations about finances and medical procedures take place, erupted in tension when Grant Whitman was confronted by his colleagues not as their chairman, but as the focus of their concerns. Whitman, his silver hair neatly combed in spite of the early hour and the crisis that had dragged them all from their breakfasts, remarked, "These accusations are absurd." An obvious attempt by a disgruntled employee to assassinate someone's reputation. Sliding another document over the gleaming mahogany table was the hospital's chief attorney, a woman who had spent her career addressing medical ethical infractions. "Dr. Whitman, these are not just accusations. Financial transactions connecting you to dubious research funding allocations, and time-stamped access card data demonstrating you and Dr. Monroe entering restricted areas after hours are among the evidence." And she paused, her businesslike manner briefly faltering. "I won't explain the video documentation in this topic." The door to the boardroom opened before Whitman could answer. Visibly uneasy, a young assistant came in and whispered something to the general counsel. The woman nodded, her face tensing up. "It seems that the Washington Post has gotten the same documents that we have," she said to the quiet chamber. "For a piece that will appear in tomorrow's publication, they are seeking feedback." A similar situation played out with far greater intensity across town in Congresswoman Diana Whitman's elegant home in Kalorama Heights. After 23 years of marriage, Diana became enraged and threw an old vase with the accuracy of a former college softball pitcher against the wall next to her husband's head. "During 3 campaigns, I was at your side, grinning, while you dodged a surgeon half my age." A crystal paperweight that was a present from a significant donor broke against the bookcase, and Grant Whitman ducked. "Please, Diana, we can make this right. The accusations are being misrepresented." Context, she chuckled without amusement. "The background is that you and your mistress financed your small medical company using the donor list from my campaign. The situation is that you have painted me as a co-conspirator or a moron. The background is that my chief of staff has gotten questions from the Justice Department, and the ethics committee is convening in 2 hours. Both of their phones buzzed before Grant could come up with a reply.